24th February 2023 has marked second year of Russian invasion in Ukraine or special military operations in Ukraine by Russia. So before 24th February, there was speculations and assumptions that Russia could invade Ukraine by the military intelligentsia based in Britain, UK, France, Germany, and USA. Even US military experts predicted that it will take only 1 or 2 weeks to capture whole Ukraine. But unfortunately, we have not seen that outcome, and it is already gone 1 year, and it is now spiraling into second year. But still, the war is going on, and heavy casualties coming on because spring is setting in and winter is gone, and both the Russian and Ukrainian forces are more organized now, and they are grinding heavy artilleries in the battlefield of Bakhmut and eastern Ukraine, especially in Luhansk and Donetsk. So Mr. Putin was, let us talk about the background of, special military operations. And let us go back to 2014. We have seen that that Russia annexed Crimea in 2014 quite successfully. And because in Crimea there was a huge public support of, to Russia. And Russian annexation of Crimea made the West really worried about the Putin intentions, and the West, especially United States of America, Germany, France, and they are very much worried about the security threat posed by Russia and Putin, especially Putin. So they started to convince Ukraine, and Ukraine failed because they lost their very strategically important territory, Crimea, to Russia. And it is very much understandable that Ukraine felt security threat, that in future their security and sovereignty, national integrity and territorial integrity might be under threat by the Putin's administrations, because as you all know that Russia is a very powerful military might in the world after United States of America, and even many would say that as parallel to US. But Russians' dominance, though they are the permanent member of UN Security Council, but after Second World War we have seen that unipolar world, or in other words, the world is dominated by the West, especially the United States of America, France, Britain, and Germany, and the European Union. So the humiliation the Russian has suffered after end of Cold War, and that made Vladimir Putin, some would argue that Vladimir Putin is the son of Cold War, in fact. So that that mentality and that humiliation injects Putin minds, and Vladimir Putin was a former spy, and his mindset is very important to analyze this this warfare in Ukraine. So in 2014, Russian annexation of Crimea has made in fact the whole West and Ukraine, and especially Ukraine's national security, national sovereignty under really threat, and that's why Ukraine pushed for NATO's membership bid, and Ukraine is just a very, I think, the gate for Russia for the rest of the world. So it is from an international security perspective, those who know a little bit that when a country's think that his national security is under threat, he can invade. He can invade. There is a provision in international systems. So if Ukraine in fact get membership of NATO, so it will be very hard for Mr. Putin to pursue his global ambitions. Or in other words, it is if Ukraine gets membership of NATO, and that will be a direct security threat for Russia. And Putin thought that Putin provided stern warning that if you go for NATO's memberships, then we will invade you. And there was, I think, before invasion in 24th February 2022, and we see how the European power like German Chancellor Olaf Scholz visited Moscow first, and France President also visited Moscow, and they convinced, but the negotiation did not work out, and the stalemate remained. And as a result, Putin thought that it is very much security threat for Russia if NATO is a next door neighbor for Russia, and which is Black Sea and Black Sea and Mediterranean Sea access. And that's why Putin thought that it will be very important for Russian national security to remain Ukraine member from getting membership from NATO. And from that perspective, Putin hurriedly invaded Ukraine, and as an assumption that he could win, he could conquer Ukraine within a week. But unfortunately, the Ukrainian people showed a lot of resistance. But and also Putin's assumption was that and due to the dependence that the Germany, the whole Europe is highly dependent on Russian natural resources, especially natural gas and power supply, electricity, and that's why and Russian oil. So he thought that if Russia invade Ukraine, especially Germany, France, and other European powers will remain neutral. They will, and there was also hint of disagreement between the Western powers like USA and Germany and France. So there are subtle fractions among Western allies, and Putin thought that the way he annexed Crimea without any international involvement, and he will also annex whole Ukraine or part of strategically important Luhansk and Donetsk and eastern Ukrainian region. But unfortunately, Putin received a overwhelmingly global resistance, though not directly, indirectly, from the Western powers, West, especially USA, Germany, Britain, France. They're providing millions, billions of dollars in terms of military aid. And that made the made the war. In fact, it is a shadow war between Russia and the NATO and the Western powers. Though NATO's forces are not directly involved in war, and it is very strategically and mature decision by the NATO. And we don't know how long it will remain silent, but we can say that the moment NATO is getting directly involved, Third World War will begin. So that is the point that I am talking about. That is still we have seen the amounts of military firepower Russia has, and we don't forget that Russia is one of the modern and most powerful nuclear power country in the world, and that's why. So we have seen Putin behave rationally so far, and there was traditional war is going on, and we have seen no nuclear forces are deployed, and the West is also supporting Kiev in a manner that you will not, and they are they are adding conditions that we are providing you the military weapons and armaments, and make sure that these armaments are not fall in mainland Russia. So I think it's a shadow war. It's a limited war is going on. It's a traditional warfare and fighting is going on in the battlefield of Ukraine. So, but unfortunately, Russia is now facing casualties than expected. So Mr. Putin's internal situation is getting also vulnerable. So the West perspective is that Russia is a nuclear power. So we will support Ukraine in a manner that will not force Russia to use nuclear weapons. So yeah, so what's going on in Ukraine is I think we can say a limited scale warfare. But as an international responsible United Nations permanent member and Security Council member, so Russia has also obligation to not to use nuclear weapons in Ukraine. So if Russia intend to use nuclear weapons, and they can destroy Ukraine within a minute, but and they will not go for it because it will not result in any good for Russia. So from and in fact the whole world existence will be in peril, and if Russia intended to do so. So the Western, especially United States of America, is now formulating a strategy and plan that that we are going to help Ukraine in a manner, in a way that is a traditional conventional warfare. We and will not support Ukraine in a long range missiles or a strategic air defense systems or nuclear arms, and that trigger Russia with something that they have no other option but using nuclear weapons. So it's a conventional war is going on in Ukraine. So the big question remains how long this war will sustain. It is very hard to predict that how long Russian and Ukraine war will sustain, but the amount of support and traditional military weapons that they are Ukrainian receiving from the West, and that will not give Russia a clear advantage or leverage to conquer Ukraine, and also and also West will not give any that amount of armaments and weapons and or economic support to the Ukrainian forces that they will topple Russia fully, because if Russia face this kind of humiliations, and they will have no other options but using advanced weapons, and that will trigger as Putin has made his point very clear that the West is trying to gradually breaking Russian Federation, dividing Russia. So it clearly indicates that Putin is worried about his own existence and Russians' existence, because these thousands of Russian soldiers are dying in the battlefield of Ukraine, and the families, the neighbors, the relatives living in Russia, and those soldiers who are died in Ukrainian war, and they are now engraved. They are very much grieved, though they are not allowed to express their opinion in Russia. Mr. Putin is highly, control those issues very strongly. But if the casualties, if this kind of warfare is going on and on, in fact, so it will be very difficult for Russia to continue with this conventional war, because its economic impact will be very high, and also it will make Mr. Putin's political position inside Russia vulnerable. So it is a very very difficult situation now Putin facing, because the way West is coming up, and the way Ukrainian general public is resisting and joining military, and they're receiving training from NATO members, and they are resisting their homeland, motherland, in a manner that is very difficult for Mr. Putin to conquer in traditional or conventional battlefield in Ukraine. So because in there is a report that in every month 5 to 6,000 Russian soldiers is dying in Ukraine. So that certainly is not a good sign for Mr. Putin. On the other hand, we have seen that economic impact will certainly be felt inside Russia because of the Western sanctions. So I think that what is the future of the Russian-Ukraine war? So is there any decisive result, or is there any decisive outcome is possible? So from now on, what's going on in Ukraine, and so I think it is very difficult for Russia to gaining clear leverage or clear win in Ukraine, and also it is very difficult for Ukraine to completely push back Russian soldiers from the Ukrainian soil. And I think what's going on. It's a grinding war is going on in Ukraine. So from now on, it is appearing that the war is going to be another 1 or 2 years, and then it will be very interesting to see how it goes. But for now, I think the West is trying to engage Russia gradually and weaken Russia gradually economically and militarily, because though Russia is a very highly rich in natural resources, and their economy is stronger than ever, but it will be very difficult for Russia to continue with high intensity in the warfare, because it is Russia, the European Unions and Western economy is 100 times greater than the Russian economy. Britain is a very developed, one of the largest economy in the world. United States, Germany, Japan, Australia, Canada, and the all European members are very resourceful country in the world. So it is very easy for West to continue the warfare in Ukraine, because NATO's members are not directly involved in it, and they have no real problem with it. Rather, it is a great advantage for Mr. Biden and United States of America and Europeans, because as long as the war prolongs, Mr. Putin will get weaker and weaker, and Russia will get weaker and weaker. And we have also seen in global forum, United Nations, that in even resolutions that the world is we have seen very few members in the world are taking side with Russia. So, and more or less, the United States of America and European countries are very successful, that they are now gradually isolating Russia. So, but still there are some countries like India and China and some other very few countries are taking neutral states, and China is looking getting as if they are backing Russia. So it is very interesting to see. It is very interesting to see the Chinese positions in Russia-Ukraine war. So and it is very, so China's involvement, China's stake in Russian-Ukraine war is very, very critical and very interesting. And China wants, as you all know, after the Cold War, the emergence of China as a global economic superpower. In fact, the United States of America, stock market, big companies are captured by the Chinese companies. So China's emergence as an economic giant, as an economic powerhouse in global stage is a real threat for United States of America. So United States of America see China as the direct threat for United States hegemony in global economy. So in fact, China already exceeded the United States in terms of GDP, in terms of economy, technology, business, trade, commerce throughout the world. So China is the ultimate rival for United States of America in terms of economic dominance in the world. So it is very interesting how China is now getting dominant in the global world that is dominated by the West. So in that given situation, China want to see a global systems or global order where the unipolarity of the West is no longer there. So China wants to see itself as in a global systems that is a multipolar world, that China's boys are counted. So China will back Russia in a manner that will not allow the Western countries or the West, the world is solely dominated by the West. So China have a, wants to have a space in the global order that 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 is not dominated by the West. So China's strategy of Xi Jinping is to remain in economic superpower. You need hard power, you need military power, because the European Union and the West, especially United States of America and Britain, and they will dominate the world, and China is the real threat for them. So China needs friends. So there is no friend China, in fact, in terms of military cooperation. So the United States have NATO, China has nothing. So China, made last year China made a very strategic, partnerships with infinite strategic partnership with Russia. And the United States of America is see itself as a clear threat, but unfortunately we have not seen. It is very difficult for China to stand Russia with militarily, because Chinese ambition is to see a multipolar world where China's positions in a is in a in a in a in a in a in a, in a, in a, is recognized by the world. So if China directly involves Russia-Ukraine war, we could see a new axis that challenge the Western blocs. So if that happens, we are going to see a new dimension of Russia and Ukraine war. As long as China remains neutral, so it will be very difficult for the Russia to conquer the Ukrainian war. So, but unfortunately, China is also taking some advantage and leverage, as the Russia is a neighbor of China, and if Russia is getting weaker, it is China is feel militarily secure. It's a bifurc imaginations, and also Russia is the second powerful country in the world after United States of America. So, and because of Russia and Ukraine war, Russia is gradually weaker, and China is taking the place of Russia. So, from that perspectives, China will support Russia in a manner, in that extent that will only weaken Russia. And if China, Xi Jinping dare to challenge the West and they take side with Russia directly, and it will be a completely different equation, that certainly it will create a new axis between the Sino-Russian partnerships and if it turns to a military level, that will challenge the West, and the world is going towards Third World War. So whether the Third World War will take place is highly dependent on Chinese Chinese movement. If China remains neutral, and it will not, and Third World War situation will not occur, or Russian-Ukraine war will not translated or transmitted into Third World War. If China directly support militarily, economically, financially to Russia, and that will give some Russian-Ukraine war to a war of Third World War. And I think it is unlikely to happen, because there are limitations of Chinese, and we have not seen China throughout history. China is involved in this kind of activities. So and also the second large question is that how long this war will go on. So I think this war will go on and on, because from a conventional level, and if Putin could not, I think I think Putin should focus on diplomatic dialogues and settlement of this war. Otherwise, as he is not able to manage decisive victory in Ukraine, and if this continues, and then Russian people will face economic burden of this war, and Mr. Putin's existence will be in trouble. And from that perspective, we have seen that the West is clearly taking advantage of this Russian-Ukraine war, and Mr. Putin, and from as of now, Russian-Ukraine war, we could see Mr. Putin's strategy is getting fully wrong now, as of now. So we have seen the casualties from the Russian side and the Ukrainian side, but Ukraine has the support of the West, especially European Union and the United States of America, and the United States of America wants to the war remain in Ukraine as long as possible, from a limited scale, so that the Russian economy, Russian military getting weaker and weaker. So I think Mr. Putin has miscalculated and misjudged this Ukraine and the burden we are facing. So the Chinese factor is very important to understand this and to determine the future of Russian and Ukraine war. And also, I think the United States of America will not allow Ukraine to win the battle, and neither United States of America allow win the Russia in Ukraine, or nor European Union. So this Russian-Ukraine war made the Western and NATO's sense of unity even more stronger, and even more even more comprehensive, and Mr. Biden is successfully maneuvering such a policy that is very much getting fruitful gradually. So that's from now. Thank you all of you for hearing me. Thank you so much.